5 years later, I stood in the marble lobby of the law firm as my parents signed away their house, their business, and every asset they had left. My sister sat beside them, her designer dress wrinkled from tears, begging me to stop the proceedings. The same sister who had stolen my graduation party, my scholarship announcement, and nearly destroyed my future. But they had no idea what I had discovered about their precious golden child or how deep her betrayal truly went. The evidence I had gathered would not only expose her crimes, but unravel the toxic web of lies that had defined my family for decades. Before we dive into how I orchestrated their complete downfall, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, and subscribe because this revenge story gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you will want to see how karma finally caught up with the people who tried to erase me. My name is Madison, and this story begins on what should have been the proudest day of my life. I had just graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern University with a degree in forensic accounting, landed a prestigious internship at a Big Four firm, and received a full scholarship for my MBA. My parents had promised to throw me a celebration dinner at our family restaurant, Torres Family Kitchen, the business my grandfather had built from nothing. I spent weeks planning every detail with my mother. We chose the menu, invited extended family, and I even designed custom invitations featuring my achievements. The restaurant was booked solid that Saturday evening, and I had invited my college friends, professors, and my boyfriend Jake to celebrate this milestone with my family. But when I arrived that evening, something was wrong. Instead of congratulations banners with my name, I saw signs reading, "Congratulations, Sophia." My younger sister stood at the center of the dining room, wearing the white dress I had specifically picked out for myself, accepting congratulations from our relatives. "What is happening here?" I asked my mother, my voice barely containing my confusion. "Oh, honey, we decided to combine your celebration with Sophia's engagement announcement. She just got engaged to David, and you know how important this is for our family's reputation. His family owns 3 car dealerships, and this connection could really help our restaurant business." My heart sank as I realized what had happened. My sister had gotten engaged the day before and convinced my parents to hijack my celebration. The scholarship I had worked 4 years to earn, the internship that would launch my career, the academic achievements I had sacrificed social events and sleep to attain. None of it mattered compared to my sister's engagement to a wealthy man. "But this was supposed to be my night," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We planned this for weeks." My father barely looked up from shaking hands with David's father. "Madison, do not be selfish. Family comes first, and Sophia's engagement is huge for all of us. You can celebrate your little school accomplishments anytime." The word "little" hit me like a physical blow. I watched as my college friends exchanged uncomfortable glances as my professor, who had driven 2 hours to celebrate with me, looked around in confusion as Jake squeezed my hand in support. My entire academic journey, the late nights studying, the internships I had fought for, the leadership positions I had earned, all reduced to little school accomplishments. But what happened next revealed just how deep the favoritism went. When David's parents asked about my achievements, thinking the party was partially for me, my mother actually downplayed everything I had accomplished. "Oh, Madison just finished college like everyone else. Nothing too special. But Sophia here, she has real talent. She has been helping us run the restaurant and has such a good business mind." This was a complete lie. Sophia had dropped out of community college after 1 semester and had been working part-time at the restaurant as a server while spending most of her time shopping and posting on social media. Meanwhile, I had been working 20-hour weeks to pay for my expenses while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. The final straw came when they brought out the cake. It was covered in white frosting with gold writing that read, "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. David Richardson," using Sophia's soon-to-be married name. There was no mention of me anywhere. "Where is my name?" I asked my mother quietly. "We thought it would be cleaner this way. You understand, right? David's family is very traditional, and we want to make a good impression." As I stood there invisible at my own celebration, watching my sister bask in attention while my achievements were erased, something fundamental shifted inside me. I realized that no matter what I accomplished, I would always be secondary to whatever my sister wanted. My parents had made their choice clear. I was expendable. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I did not throw a fit or cause a scene. Instead, I smiled, congratulated my sister, and quietly slipped out during the toasts. Jake followed me to the parking lot. "Madison, I cannot believe they did that to you," he said, pulling me into his arms. "It is okay." I lied, already forming a plan in my mind. Family dynamics are complicated. But it was not okay, and as I drove home that night, I knew I was done being the invisible daughter. What I did not know yet was that my sister had been hiding secrets that would make her engagement celebration look like a minor family disagreement. The forensic accounting skills that my parents had dismissed as little school accomplishments were about to become the very tools I would use to uncover a web of fraud that went straight through the heart of Torres family kitchen. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to things I had previously ignored. Small inconsistencies in the restaurant's financial discussions, expensive purchases my sister made despite her part-time server salary, and most importantly, the way she had suddenly become so interested in helping with the restaurant's bookkeeping right around the time she started dating David. 3 weeks after my celebration, that was not. I was packing up my childhood bedroom to move to Chicago for my internship when I discovered something that changed everything. Hidden behind my old textbooks, I found a stack of Torres family kitchen financial documents that Sophia had apparently been hiding in my room, probably assuming I would never look there since I was moving out. The documents revealed a sophisticated embezzlement scheme that made my blood run cold. Using my forensic accounting training, I spent the next 2 days analyzing every piece of paper, cross-referencing dates and amounts, and what I found was staggering. Sophia had been systematically stealing from the restaurant for over 18 months, but not in an obvious way that would trigger immediate suspicion. She had been manipulating the point-of-sale system to void transactions after customers paid in cash, pocketing the money while making it look like legitimate voids for customer complaints. She had also been creating fake vendor invoices for cleaning supplies and maintenance services, paying herself through a shell company she had created using a fake business license. The most damaging discovery was a series of forged checks. Sophia had been writing checks to herself from the restaurant's account using a signature stamp she had somehow obtained, and then doctoring the books to make it appear as though the money had gone toward legitimate business expenses. The amounts were never huge, usually between $500 and $1,500, but over 18 months she had stolen nearly $47,000 from our family business. But the financial theft was only part of the story. As I dug deeper, I realized why she had suddenly become so interested in the restaurant's bookkeeping and why she was so eager to marry David Richardson. His family's car dealership empire was built on legitimate business, but David himself had a gambling problem that his wealthy parents had been covering up for years. Sophia had met him at a casino, and their entire relationship was built on a shared addiction to high-stakes gambling. The money she had stolen from Torres family kitchen was being funneled into their joint gambling activities. I found records of trips to Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and even private poker games where they regularly lost thousands of dollars. The engagement ring David had given her was purchased with a credit card that was already maxed out, and they were planning to use the connection to our restaurant as collateral for even larger gambling debts. But here is where it gets worse. Sophia was planning to steal even more. Hidden in the documents was a detailed plan to transfer the restaurant's business loan into her name after the wedding, using her new position as David's wife to gain credibility with the bank. She planned to take out additional loans against the restaurant's equity and then disappear with David to start fresh somewhere else, leaving my parents with nothing but debt. The betrayal was so calculated, so cold, that I had to sit down and catch my breath. This was not just stealing money. This was planning to destroy our family's entire legacy while using her engagement as cover. The restaurant that my grandfather had built with his own hands, that my parents had poured their lives into, was being systematically dismantled by their own daughter. I photographed every document, created detailed spreadsheets tracking the stolen money, and built a comprehensive timeline of the theft. My forensic accounting training had taught me exactly how to present financial evidence in a way that would be impossible to dispute or explain away. Then I discovered something that made me physically sick. Among Sophia's papers was a text message thread she had printed out, apparently as some kind of insurance or blackmail material. The messages were between her and David, and they revealed the true scope of their plan. Once we get married and I convince Dad to make me a partner, we can take out a massive loan against the restaurant and disappear. My parents will never suspect anything until it is too late. They think I am their perfect little princess who can do no wrong. What about Madison? She is smart with numbers. What if she figures it out? Madison is moving to Chicago for her fancy internship. She thinks she is too good for the family business anyway. By the time she realizes what happened, we will be long gone with the money. Besides, Mom and Dad will never believe her over me. I have always been their favorite. Reading those words felt like being punched in the stomach. Not only had Sophia stolen from our family and planned to destroy our legacy, but she had specifically counted on my parents' favoritism to protect her from any accusations I might make. She knew that even if I discovered her crimes, they would choose to believe her over me. That night, I called my internship supervisor and explained that I had discovered a significant fraud case involving my family's business. Instead of being upset about the personal connection, she was impressed by my detective work and suggested that I document everything properly before taking action. This case would actually serve as an excellent real-world application of my forensic accounting skills. But I was not ready to expose Sophia yet. First, I needed to understand exactly how deep this went and who else might be involved. I also needed to protect my parents from the worst of the financial damage, even though they had made it clear I was not their priority. I decided to go to Chicago as planned, but I would be conducting my investigation from a distance. I had $47,000 worth of documented theft evidence of an ongoing conspiracy to commit fraud and a clear paper trail that led straight to my sister. But I wanted more than just justice for the money she had already stolen. I wanted to make sure she could never hurt my family again. What Sophia did not know was that her future husband David had been documenting their gambling activities in a private journal which I had photographed among the papers. What she also did not know was that David's wealthy parents had been monitoring his spending and were already suspicious about his recent cash flow. They had hired a private investigator to look into his finances, which meant they would soon discover the connection to Torres Family Kitchen. As I prepared to leave for Chicago, I realized that I had everything I needed to not only expose Sophia's crimes, but to completely unravel the fantasy life she had built. The forensic accounting skills that my parents had dismissed as little school accomplishments were about to become the weapon I used to bring down their precious golden child. But first, I needed allies, and I knew exactly where to start. My first week in Chicago changed everything. Not only was I excelling at my internship with Morrison and Associates, but I discovered that my supervisor, Patricia Williams, had an interesting connection to my situation. During a casual lunch conversation, I mentioned that I was from a restaurant family, and her eyes lit up. Torres Family Kitchen. I know that place. My ex-husband's family owns Richardson Auto Group. Small world. Actually, there has been some family drama lately about their son David getting engaged. Apparently, his parents are not thrilled about the match. I nearly choked on my coffee. Really? Why is that? Well, David has some serious gambling issues that the family has been covering up for years. His parents caught him stealing from the dealership last year to pay off debts, and they made him go to therapy and take a lesser role in the business. But lately, his spending has picked up again, and they are suspicious about this new girlfriend of his. They think she might be enabling his gambling. This was the confirmation I needed. I carefully explained my situation to Patricia, showing her some of the evidence I had gathered. As a forensic accountant with 20 years of experience, she immediately recognized the sophistication of Sophia's scheme and the potential criminal implications. Madison, this goes way beyond family drama. Your sister has committed multiple felonies here, but if you want to build an airtight case, you need to be strategic about how you proceed. Patricia helped me understand the legal process and connected me with Marcus Thompson, a criminal defense attorney who specialized in white-collar crime. Marcus reviewed my evidence and was impressed by how thoroughly I had documented everything. The good news is that you have excellent evidence of embezzlement fraud and conspiracy. The bad news is that going after family members in these cases can get messy, especially when there are multiple victims involved. We need to think about how to protect your parents while ensuring justice is served. Marcus explained that the best approach would be to work with law enforcement to set up a controlled investigation. This would allow us to gather additional evidence while protecting the restaurant from further damage. He also suggested that we reach out to the Richardson family since they were likely victims of David's financial crimes as well. This led to the most unexpected alliance of all. Through Patricia's connections, I was able to arrange a meeting with David's parents, Robert and Catherine Richardson. They had been desperately trying to figure out where their son was getting money for his renewed gambling activities, and when I showed them the evidence linking Sophia to David's spending, they were both grateful and furious. We knew something was wrong when David suddenly had cash again, Catherine told me. We had cut off his access to family money and were monitoring his legitimate income. But we had no idea he had found someone to help him steal from another family business. Robert was more direct. We are not going to let our son destroy another family the way he nearly destroyed ours. What do you need from us? The Richardson family brought resources and connections that I could never have accessed on my own. They had already been working with a private investigator named Sarah Kim, who had been tracking David's activities for months. When Sarah saw my financial evidence, she was able to fill in gaps in the timeline and provide surveillance photos that showed David and Sophia at various casinos and high-stakes poker games. But the most valuable asset the Richardsons provided was access to David's personal banking records, which his parents controlled as part of his probationary arrangement after his previous theft. These records showed that David had been regularly depositing cash that matched exactly with the amounts Sophia had stolen from Torres Family Kitchen. Sarah also discovered something that none of us had expected. Sophia and David were not just planning to steal from our families and disappear. They had already opened accounts in the Cayman Islands and were planning to flee the country immediately after their wedding. The wedding itself was scheduled to take place in just 6 weeks, and they had already booked flights to leave for the Cayman Islands the day after the ceremony. They are not just thieves, Sarah explained during one of our strategy meetings. They are planning to become international fugitives. Once they leave the country with the money, it will be nearly impossible to recover the funds or bring them back for prosecution. This revelation changed our entire timeline. We could not wait for a long, drawn-out investigation. We needed to act before the wedding, but we also needed to make sure that we had enough evidence to ensure convictions. Marcus worked with the FBI's white-collar crime division to open an official investigation. The federal involvement was crucial because the planned flight to the Cayman Islands made this a case of international money laundering, which carried much more serious penalties than simple theft. Meanwhile, I was playing a dangerous game back home. I had been staying in touch with my family, pretending that everything was normal while secretly gathering additional evidence. Sophia had no idea that I knew about her crimes, and she had been calling me regularly to talk about wedding planning, completely oblivious to the investigation building around her. During one of these calls, she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. I am so excited that Mom and Dad are making me a full partner in the restaurant as a wedding gift. David's parents are doing the same thing with the dealership. It is going to be amazing to finally have real control over the business. This meant that my parents were about to give Sophia legal authority to make major financial decisions for Torres Family Kitchen, which would make her planned theft even easier to execute. I realized that I needed to accelerate our timeline even if it meant taking bigger risks. That weekend, I flew home for what I told my family was a quick visit to help with wedding planning. In reality, I was working with Sarah Kim to install surveillance equipment in the restaurant and to gather the final pieces of evidence we needed. But as I sat in my childhood bedroom that Friday night listening to Sophia on the phone in the next room making plans with David about their new life in paradise, I had no idea that our carefully constructed investigation was about to hit a massive obstacle. Someone close to our team was about to betray us, and the next 48 hours would test everything I had learned about Trust Family and the true cost of justice. What I discovered on Saturday morning would change not just the trajectory of our case, but my understanding of who I could really count on when everything was on the line. Saturday morning started with what should have been the final phase of our investigation. Sarah Kim and I were meeting at a coffee shop near Torres Family Kitchen to review our surveillance plan when my phone rang. It was Marcus Thompson, and his voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Madison, we have a serious problem. Someone leaked information about our investigation to David Richardson." My heart stopped. "What do you mean, leaked?" David called his parents this morning demanding to know why they were working with his crazy girlfriend's jealous sister to frame him. He knew specific details about our evidence, our timeline, and even the federal investigation number. Someone with access to our case files told him everything. I felt the blood drain from my face. How is that possible? The only people who knew the full scope were you, Patricia, Sarah, and the Richardson parents. That is what we thought too. But David mentioned something that only one person could have told him. He knew about the surveillance equipment we planned to install today. The only person outside our core team who knew that detail was Patricia Williams. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Patricia, my supervisor, who had introduced me to Marcus, who had helped me understand the legal process, who had connected me to the Richardson family. She had been feeding information to David all along. Sarah arrived at the coffee shop just as Marcus was explaining the full scope of Patricia's betrayal. As it turned out, Patricia had not randomly connected me to the Richardson family through her ex-husband's connection to their auto dealership. Her ex-husband was David's uncle, and despite their divorce, Patricia had maintained a relationship with David that none of us had known about. Patricia has been David's financial advisor for years, Sarah explained, showing us bank records that the FBI had uncovered that morning. She helped him set up the shell companies he used to hide his gambling losses from his parents. She also helped him create the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated that I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. Patricia had not just leaked our investigation. She had been David's partner in crime from the beginning. When I had confided in her about Sophia's theft, thinking I was getting help, I had actually been giving Patricia and David a roadmap to cover their tracks. "There is more," Marcus said grimly. "Patricia called your sister last night. Sophia knows everything about our investigation, and she has been feeding your parents false information to turn them against you." My phone buzzed with a text message from my mother. "Madison, we need to talk. Come to the restaurant immediately. Your accusations against Sophia are unacceptable, and we will not tolerate you trying to destroy her happiness out of jealousy." I stared at the message, feeling the familiar sting of my parents choosing Sophia over me, even when faced with evidence of her crimes. But this time, the betrayal cut deeper, because I knew it was orchestrated by someone I had trusted. "They know we are coming," I said, showing Marcus and Sarah the text. "Sophia has had 12 hours to destroy evidence, create alibis, and turn my parents against me. Our entire case just fell apart." Sarah was already on her phone with the FBI team. "We can still move forward, but we need to act fast. If Sophia destroys the physical evidence before we can secure it, we will lose our strongest proof of the embezzlement." But when we arrived at Torres Family Kitchen, the scene was worse than I had imagined. My parents were waiting in the office with Sophia and David, and the atmosphere was arctic. The surveillance equipment we had planned to install was unnecessary. Everything was about to explode into the open. "Madison," my father said without any warmth in his voice, "Patricia Williams called us last night. She told us about your vindictive little scheme to frame Sophia for crimes she did not commit. We are ashamed of you." Sophia sat beside David, playing the role of wounded innocent perfectly. Her eyes were red from crying, and she held his hand like she was drawing strength from their love. "I cannot believe you would try to destroy my wedding and my relationship with David's family because you are jealous that I found happiness." "Did Patricia also tell you that she has been helping David steal money and hide it in offshore accounts?" I asked, pulling out copies of the bank records. "Did she mention that she helped create the shell companies your daughter used to steal $47,000 from this restaurant?" My mother snatched the papers from my hands and barely glanced at them before tearing them up. "These could be fake documents you created on your computer. You studied accounting. You would know how to make false paperwork look real." David stood up, his face a mask of righteous indignation. "My family's attorney has already reviewed these so-called evidence packets you have been spreading around. They are completely fabricated. You are trying to extort money from my family by threatening to make false accusations unless we pay you to go away." The lies were so smooth, so well rehearsed, that I realized Patricia had not just warned them about our investigation. She had coached them on how to respond. They had spent the night creating a counter-narrative that painted me as the criminal. "Where are the original financial documents that were in my bedroom?" I asked Sophia directly. She looked confused for just a moment before recovering. What documents? I have never hidden anything in your room. You moved to Chicago weeks ago. Why would there be any restaurant paperwork in your old bedroom? My father nodded approvingly. Exactly. Sophia has been working hard to help us modernize our bookkeeping system. She would never steal from the family business that she is going to inherit. The word inherit hit me like a slap. I realized that my parents had not just made Sophia a partner, they had changed their will to leave her the entire restaurant, cutting me out completely. Sarah tried to intervene with the FBI credentials and a legal explanation of our evidence, but my parents refused to listen. They had already decided that I was the villain in this story and nothing would change their minds. I think you should leave, my mother said coldly. Sophia is getting married next weekend, and we will not let you ruin her special day with these horrible accusations. If you continue this harassment, we will get a restraining order. As we walked out of Torres' family kitchen, I felt completely defeated. Patricia's betrayal had not just destroyed our investigation, it had handed Sophia and David the perfect defense while turning my parents against me permanently. They were going to get away with everything, and I was going to lose my family entirely. But as Sarah and I sat in her car outside the restaurant watching my parents comfort Sophia through the window, she said something that gave me the first spark of hope I had felt all day. Madison Patricia made a mistake when she betrayed us. She revealed information that she should not have had access to, which means she just confessed to federal crimes. And there is someone we have not talked to yet, someone who has been watching this whole situation unfold and has evidence that even Patricia does not know about. The someone Sarah was referring to turned out to be my grandfather's oldest friend, Miguel Santos, who had been Torres Family Kitchen's accountant for over 30 years. At 74, Miguel still maintained the books for several family businesses in our community, and he had been quietly watching the restaurant's finances with growing concern. I tried to talk to your parents about irregularities I was seeing, but they told me Sophia was handling more of the day-to-day financial work now. Miguel explained when Sarah and I met with him Monday morning. They said she was learning the business and I should trust her judgment, but the numbers were not adding up. Miguel had been doing his own investigation for months, completely independent of our efforts. As an old-school accountant who still kept detailed paper records, he had documentation that went back years, including original bank statements, vendor contracts, and cash flow reports that Sophia could not have altered or destroyed. Your sister made a critical error. He continued, spreading out ledgers across his dining room table. She assumed that because the restaurant was using modern point-of-sale systems and digital banking, no one was keeping old-fashioned paper trails. But I always keep hard copies of everything, and I noticed discrepancies between my records and what the bank statement showed. Miguel's records revealed that Sophia's theft was even more extensive than I had originally calculated. She had been stealing for almost 2 years, not 18 months, and the total amount was closer to $68,000. More importantly, Miguel had copies of the original checks with Sophia's forged signatures vendor invoices that she had created for fake services, and even surveillance footage from the restaurant's security cameras that showed her manipulating the point-of-sale system. I saved all the security footage because I knew something was wrong, Miguel said. Your grandfather taught me to always trust my instincts about money, and my instincts were screaming that someone was stealing. I just never imagined it would be his granddaughter. But Miguel's most valuable evidence came from an unexpected source, David Richardson himself. As someone who had been managing books for small businesses for decades, Miguel knew the importance of verifying vendor relationships. When he started seeing payments to unfamiliar companies, he had done background checks on the businesses and discovered that several of them were connected to David. This young man was not just dating your sister. He was actively helping her steal money and launder it through businesses he controlled. I have bank records showing that money stolen from Torres Family Kitchen was being deposited into accounts that he managed. Miguel had also documented David's gambling activities independently. As treasurer for the local business association, he had connections throughout the hospitality industry, including several casino managers who remembered David and Sophia as regular high-stakes players. They were not hiding their gambling very well, Miguel said with a wry smile. When you spend that kind of money regularly, people remember you. I have statements from 3 different casinos confirming that they were frequent visitors and often lost significant amounts. The most damning evidence Miguel provided was something that Patricia Williams had no knowledge of: a recorded phone conversation between Sophia and David where they explicitly discussed their theft and escape plans. Miguel had accidentally recorded the conversation when Sophia called the restaurant one evening while Miguel was working late. His old-fashioned answering machine had picked up the call when Sophia thought no one was there. In the recording, Sophia and David discussed specific amounts they had stolen, the timeline for transferring additional money before their wedding, and their plan to disappear to the Cayman Islands. They even laughed about how stupid my parents were for trusting Sophia and how jealous I would be when I found out they had gotten away with everything. I know this recording might not be admissible in court because they did not consent to being recorded, Miguel said, but it proves that everything you suspected about them is true. Sarah immediately called the FBI team with this new evidence. Agent Rodriguez, who had taken over the case after Patricia's betrayal was discovered, was amazed by the thoroughness of Miguel's documentation. "This is exactly what we need," Agent Rodriguez told us during an emergency meeting. "Miguel's independent investigation corroborates everything Madison found, but it is coming from a neutral party with no family connection to the suspects. This makes the evidence much stronger in court." But Miguel was not done. He had also been investigating Patricia Williams after she started appearing in the restaurant's financial picture. As someone who had been in the accounting business for decades, Miguel had connections throughout the profession, and he had learned disturbing things about Patricia's recent activities. Patricia has been involved in at least 3 other similar schemes over the past 5 years, Miguel revealed. She identifies young people with gambling problems from wealthy families, then helps them steal money from family businesses to fund their addictions. She takes a percentage of the stolen money in exchange for her services. Patricia's pattern was always the same. She would befriend someone connected to a family business, gain their trust by offering professional advice, and then use her access to help facilitate theft while positioning herself as a helpful mentor. The FBI discovered that she had been under investigation by the State Accounting Board for ethics violations, but those cases had stalled because victims were reluctant to testify against family members. "Patricia chose your sister because Torres Family Kitchen was the perfect target," Agent Rodriguez explained. "Successful family business parents who trusted their children completely, and a daughter who was already showing signs of financial irresponsibility. Patricia probably spotted Sophia's potential months before David even met her." The revelation that my sister had not just stumbled into criminal behavior, but had been deliberately recruited by a professional fraud ring made the betrayal somehow even worse. Sophia had not been tempted into making bad choices. She had been groomed to destroy our family business. But Miguel's evidence gave us something: Patricia's betrayal had taken away the ability to act decisively. Agent Rodriguez obtained warrants to freeze all of David and Sophia's accounts, including the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. They also placed both suspects under surveillance to prevent them from fleeing before the arrests. "The wedding is in 4 days, Agent Rodriguez told us. "We are going to let them proceed with their plans right up until the moment they try to leave for their honeymoon. That way, we can charge them with attempted flight to avoid prosecution, which carries additional penalties." Miguel agreed to testify against Sophia, Patricia, and David, providing the credible witness testimony that our case had been missing. His reputation in the business community and his decades-long relationship with my family made him the perfect person to explain the financial evidence to a jury. "Your grandfather would be proud of you for fighting for the truth," Miguel told me as we prepared to leave his house. "But he would also want you to know that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you are born into. Your parents may not see the truth now, but justice has a way of opening people's eyes." As we drove back to meet with the FBI team, I felt something I had not experienced in months: genuine hope. Not just hope that Sophia and David would face consequences for their crimes, but hope that I might be able to save Torres Family Kitchen and preserve my grandfather's legacy, even if it meant losing my relationship with my parents permanently. But first, we had to get through the next 4 days without Sophia and David realizing that their entire plan had been exposed. The FBI wanted them to proceed with the wedding so they could gather evidence of the money laundering operation and catch them in the act of attempting to flee. This meant I had to pretend to be the defeated, jealous sister while watching my family celebrate the very people who were planning to destroy them. The hardest part was knowing that in just 4 days, everything would change forever. The morning of Sophia's wedding dawned bright and clear, which felt almost insulting given what was about to unfold. I sat in my car across from Torres' family kitchen, watching my parents arrange flowers and set up tables for the reception, completely unaware that their daughter and her fiancé were about to be arrested for federal crimes. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Agent Rodriguez and her team would allow the ceremony to proceed normally, then arrest David and Sophia at the airport when they attempted to board their flight to the Cayman Islands. This would provide the strongest possible evidence of their intent to flee and would ensure that all their assets were frozen before they could access any offshore accounts. I had not been invited to the wedding, of course. My parents had made it clear that my jealous accusations were not welcome at their precious daughter's special day. But Miguel Santos was there along with several other family friends who had agreed to serve as witnesses for the FBI. The ceremony itself went off without a hitch. Sophia looked radiant in her white dress, playing the role of the blushing bride perfectly, while secretly planning to steal everything my family had worked for. David stood beside her at the altar, promising to love and honor her while knowing that their honeymoon was actually a permanent escape to a non-extradition country. My parents beamed with pride as they watched their youngest daughter exchange vows with the man they believed would secure her future. The irony was devastating. They were celebrating the very relationship that was about to destroy them. But the real drama began 3 hours after the ceremony when David and Sophia arrived at O'Hare Airport for their flight. Agent Rodriguez later told me that they were laughing and congratulating themselves on their successful deception right up until the moment federal agents surrounded them at the gate. David Richardson and Sophia Torres, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and theft of funds in excess of $50,000, Agent Rodriguez announced as she placed handcuffs on my sister. The airport arrest was captured on security cameras, and the footage quickly made its way to local news stations. By evening, the story was everywhere. Local restaurant heiress and fiancé arrested for elaborate theft scheme. My parents called me that night, their voices shattered with disbelief and confusion. Madison, we do not understand what is happening. The FBI is saying that Sophia stole money from the restaurant, but that is impossible. You know Sophia would never. Mom, I said gently, I tried to tell you about this weeks ago. I had evidence of everything they were doing, but you chose not to believe me. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long that I thought they had hung up. Finally, my father spoke, his voice barely a whisper. How much money? $68,000 over 2 years. Plus, they were planning to steal much more after the wedding and flee to the Cayman Islands. What followed was the most difficult conversation I had ever had with my parents. I walked them through the evidence, the investigation, the betrayal by Patricia Williams, and the months of planning that David and Sophia had put into their scheme. With each revelation, I could hear my parents' world crumbling a little bit more. We gave her partnership in the restaurant as a wedding gift, my mother said through tears. She was going to have legal authority to take out loans against the business. If you had not stopped them, they would have taken everything, I finished. The restaurant, the building, even your retirement savings. They had it all planned out. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and family reckoning. Patricia Williams was arrested as the ringleader of the fraud operation, and investigators discovered that she had been running similar schemes across 3 states. David's parents were devastated to learn the extent of their son's crimes, but cooperated fully with the investigation. Sophia and David both eventually pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges. The prosecutor was particularly harsh in her sentencing recommendation, noting that they had specifically targeted family businesses and shown no remorse for the harm they had caused to their own relatives. The defendants demonstrated a level of callousness toward their own families that is truly shocking, the prosecutor said during the sentencing hearing. They were willing to destroy the financial security of people who loved and trusted them simply to fund their gambling addiction and lifestyle. Sophia received 8 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay full restitution to Torres Family Kitchen. David received 10 years due to his previous theft conviction and his role in recruiting Patricia Williams. Patricia herself received 15 years for running the fraud ring and was banned from working in financial services for life. But the most important changes were not legal ones. They were personal. My parents slowly began to understand the extent of their favoritism and how it had nearly cost them everything. The process was not easy, and there were many difficult conversations about years of dismissing my achievements while overlooking Sophia's obvious problems. "We failed you," my father said during one of our family therapy sessions. "We were so focused on protecting Sophia that we never saw how we were hurting you, and we never appreciated how much you had accomplished on your own." My mother was even more direct. "I kept telling myself that family should come first, but I never realized that you were family too. You were the one trying to protect us, and we treated you like an outsider." The restaurant survived, but it required significant changes. Miguel Santos agreed to come out of retirement to serve as the official financial manager, implementing new oversight procedures to prevent future theft. My parents also asked me to join the business as a partner, acknowledging that my forensic accounting skills were exactly what Torres Family Kitchen needed to thrive in the modern economy. But perhaps the most meaningful change was the family I chose to build around myself. Jake proposed to me 6 months after the arrests, saying that watching me fight for justice even when my own family turned against me had shown him what kind of person he wanted to spend his life with. Miguel became like a grandfather to me, sharing stories about my grandfather and teaching me about the restaurant industry from someone who truly understood its heart. Agent Rodriguez became a mentor and eventually offered me a position with the FBI's white-collar crime division where I could use my skills to help other families who had been victimized by fraud. Sarah Kim became a close friend, and we continued to work together on cases involving financial crimes. The Richardson family, despite the pain their son had caused, became unexpected allies. Robert and Catherine had learned hard lessons about enabling destructive behavior, and they established a foundation to help families dealing with gambling addiction and financial crimes. As I write this story now, 3 years after Sophia's arrest, Torres Family Kitchen is more successful than it has ever been. We expanded to 2 locations, and the business has become a model for family restaurant management and financial oversight. My parents and I have rebuilt our relationship, though it is different now. More honest, more equal, and based on mutual respect, rather than traditional family hierarchy. I never expected that the worst betrayal of my life would lead to the best relationships I have ever had. Sometimes the family that chooses to stand by you is stronger than the family you were born into. Sometimes justice takes longer than you want, but when it finally comes, it brings healing you never thought was possible. And sometimes the skills that your family dismisses as unimportant turn out to be exactly what you need to save them from themselves. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what was right? Have you experienced karma coming full circle in your own life when someone who wronged you finally faced consequences? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help other people feel less alone in their struggles. Hit that like button if this story reminded you that standing up for truth is always worth it, even when it costs you everything. Subscribe and ring the notification bell because I share more real stories about family justice and life lessons every week. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Thank you for watching my journey from invisible daughter to the person who saved her family's legacy. Remember, your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It is determined by how you choose to treat yourself and others when it matters most.